Many PC gamers are understandably worried about stability problems facing Intel 13th and 14th general CPUs, codenamed Raptor Lake, particularly the Core NNE 13900K and Core NNE 14900K. Over the past few months, there have been escalating reports of stability problems and game crashes, and even some accounts of chip failure. Although problems were noted in 2023, in 2024 things only became more perplexing as Intel, motherboard partners, game developers, tech journalists, and even Nvidia speculated about underlying causes or possible remedies. Intel is now officially investigating the issue, which it says is due to a microcode fault affecting voltages, and is planning a fix for August 6, 2024. Intel has just expanded on its 2-year extended warranty announcement, listing all CPUs this will cover, which range from the Core IFIV 13600KF up to the Core NNE 14900KS. Box processor customers, i.e., people who bought directly from Intel, can contact Intel customer support for assistance, but tray processor customers will need to contact their place of purchase. We're still waiting to hear more from Intel about the elevated operating voltage that it says is causing instability problems in 13th and 14th general CPUs that have a processor base power of 65W or higher. That includes all K-series desktop processors. We're also waiting for a microcode patch that Intel says should fix the issue for CPUs not already impacted. Intel is targeting mid-August for rolling this patch out. From mid-2023 onwards, we started to hear increasing reports from game developers and gamers that high-end Intel 13th and 14th general CPUs, primarily the Core NNE 13900K and Core NNE 14900K, were crashing in Unreal Engine games. By mid-July 2024, it became obvious that these Raptor Lake CPUs have stability issues. Both CPUs and servers and end-user systems have been noted to have a high incidence of crashes and even chip failure. These crashes seem to occur during shader compression/decompression/compilation in games. The crash errors often reference a problem with video memory, which might hint at a GPU issue but, in fact, are caused by the CPU. The errors might also reference data corruption. The stability problems also seem to manifest as general crashes, hang-ups, or erratic behavior when the CPU is under heavy loads. Over the past few months, the solutions offered up have been only temporary fixes, such as underclocking or undervolting the CPU, which game developers and Nvidia recommended. In what now seems like another temporary measure, back in April, Intel recommended motherboard manufacturers implement BIOS files that adhere to Intel's recommended power profiles. Manufacturers started to do so, but unfortunately, the updated BIOS files didn't follow Intel's latest recommendations. Now, Intel has admitted that there's actually a problem with the CPU microcode causing elevated operating voltage in affected processors and is planning on rolling out a mid-August microcode patch to fix the issue. While Intel has said it won't recall chips already affected, the company encourages anyone facing issues to contact customer support. The first hints that something might be wrong with Intel 13th and 14th general CPUs came during mid to late 2023 when some game developers identified heightened crashing risks for them in games. In its August 2023 Remnant 2 update notes via TechSpot, Gearbox stated, "We have identified an issue on some Intel 13th generation CPUs where upon startup the game will display a message about being out of video memory, or the crash reporter will pop up referencing an issue with decompressing a shader. If you experience this problem, you will likely also see it in other DX12 games." Gearbox recommended underclocking affected CPUs using Intel's Extreme Tuning Utility XTU. At the end of 2023, Vermintide 2 developer Fetchark said, "It has been noted that players with the Intel NNE 13900/14900 and Intel Iceman 13700/14700 CPUs are prone to these crashes. Players have been able to work around this by underclocking the performance core speed using Intel XTU from X55 to X53. Similar reports continued into 2024. In February, RAD, a division of Epic Games, pointed the finger at Intel for Unreal Engine game crashes, stating, "We believe that this is a hardware problem which affects primarily Intel 13900K and 14900K processors, less likely 13700, 14700 and other related processors as well." More and more Unreal Engine games seem to be having problems with the current and previous general Intel processors, particularly the high-end Core NNE 13900K and Core INNE 14900K, primarily during shader compilation. Around this time, all kinds of potential causes and solutions were suggested, including undervolting the CPU. In seeming agreement with Fatshark and others, NVIDIA reportedly recommended Viatom's hardware affected users underclock their CPUs and remember that clock frequency scales with voltage, so an underclock is equivalent to an indirect undervolt. Intel eventually started investigating the issue, telling ZDNet Korea that it is aware of problems that occur when executing certain tasks on 13th and 14th generation core processors for desktop PCs, and is analyzing them with major affiliates. It was also leaked that Intel recommended partnered system and motherboard manufacturers to provide end users with a default BIOS profile that matches Intel recommended settings. Motherboard manufacturers started to implement recommended Intel baseline profiles to BIOS files. Asus added a baseline profile, but it didn't do quite what Intel recommended. Other motherboard vendors followed suit, releasing BIOS updates that, according to Intel, didn't fully adhere to Intel's recommendations. Intel said via HardwareLux, several motherboard manufacturers have released BIOS profiles labeled Intel Baseline Profile. However, these BIOS profiles are not the same as the Intel default settings recommendations that Intel has recently shared with its partners regarding the instability issues reported on 13th and 14th General K SKU processors. The company then presented a table to make clear its actual recommendations and pressured motherboard manufacturers to implement proper default settings. Then, in June, Intel found and patched a CPU microcode bug that wasn't the root cause of the problems but could have potentially contributed to 13th and 14th general instability. But given that the bug in question was to do with the thermal boost feature on the INNE chips, this only raised further questions about deeper thermal and voltage issues. The stability issues were then brought back into the full light of day when, in mid-July, game developer Alderan Games said it was switching all its servers to AMD, claiming it's only a matter of time before affected CPUs fail. Further intrigue was sparked when YouTuber Levelone Tech investigated Intel stability issues by looking through data some game developers gave him, finding that 90% of errors occurred for Intel 13th and 14th general systems. Levelone Tech also spoke to a data center service provider that confirmed unusually high support incidents for Intel 13th and 14th general configurations. The fact that servers seemed to be facing issues with 13th and 14th general chips made people think it might not be caused by high-end CPUs being pushed to the limits because server CPUs are often lower power for stability. Nevertheless, there was still reasonable speculation that the problems could be because of elevated or incorrect voltages. For instance, on July 14, Buildzoid pointed out that the stability issues seemed to be worse on higher voltages, which is why the Core IFIV 14600K and lower have fewer crash reports, because they mostly operate below 1.4V. There's also been speculation over the issue being degradation caused by oxidation, but Intel has denied that oxidation is related to the current stability problems. It has, however, confirmed that oxidation problems were identified in late 2022 and that the company was able to confirm full removal of impacted processors in our supply chain by early 2024. But that on-shelf inventory may have persisted into early 2024 as a result. Whatever the case, Intel claims this is unrelated to the stability problems in question. Intel then confirmed that the stability problems are, as others had speculated, to do with incorrect voltages, telling us that elevated operating voltage is causing instability issues in some 13th/14th general desktop, and this is stemming from a microcode algorithm resulting in incorrect voltage requests to the processor. It also said it is delivering a microcode patch which addresses the root cause of exposure to elevated voltages, and that it's targeting mid-August for the patch release. Since then, it's mostly been a waiting game. But Intel has told The Verge that it won't recall chips already affected, stating that customers experiencing instability on their 13th or 14th generation desktop processor-based systems should contact Intel customer support for further assistance. The company also confirmed that 13th and 14th general processors with a 65W processor base power or higher could be affected, though of course not all will be. This means not just the INNEs, but potentially all the way down to the Core IFIV 13400 and Core IFIV 14400 too. That's where we're at right now, at least officially. We're waiting for Intel to push out its mid-August patch. Unofficially, though, the speculation and investigation continue. For instance, Buildzoid has been examining Intel CPU voltages using an oscilloscope, and, according to one forum summary, the issue appears to be caused by non-standard transient voltage spikes in addition to the more normal ones. These spikes won't be detected by regular voltage monitoring programs because they occur too quickly. This, so the theory goes, might be causing the processors to degrade prematurely. There's also some optimism on the unofficial speculation front. Workstation builder Puget Systems seems to be experiencing few issues with Intel 13th and 14th general CPUs, probably because the company sets its own BIOS settings, especially power settings, based on extensive testing. This suggests that taking extra care with BIOS settings could prevent some of the stability issues people seem to be encountering. That's unofficial, though, so for now, we await further word from Intel. It might already be too late for public opinion and reputation, however, as a law firm has already begun investigating whether to launch a class action lawsuit against Intel over the stability problems. Update: now possibly 2 law firms. Intel recently announced 2-year extended warranty support for our boxed Intel Core 13th and 14th general desktop processors, and has listed the processors this applies to, which range from the Core IFIV 13600KF to the Core INNE 14900KS. If you bought the processor from Intel, you can contact Intel customer support here, but if you bought a tray processor from a third-party seller, you'll have to contact your place of purchase. If the upcoming microcode patch fixes the problem and we can be sure all newly purchased 13th and 14th general CPUs will be fine, I can happily recommend them again. But until we know that's the case, I advise caution. The fixes others have suggested, such as underclocking, are temporary solutions to a deeper underlying problem and, at any rate, decrease performance, so the official microcode patch is what we're waiting for.